couple of stories from Luke's Gospel. Luke 18:35. As Jesus was coming near Jericho, there was a blind man sitting by the road begging. When he heard the crowd passing by, he asked, "What is this?" "Jesus of Nazareth is passing by," they told him. And he cried out, "Jesus, Son of David, take pity on me." And the people in front scolded him and told him to be quiet. But he shouted even more loudly, "Son of David, take pity on me." So Jesus stopped and ordered the blind man to be brought to him. When he came near, Jesus asked him, "What do you want me to do for you?" "Sir," he answered, "I want to see again." Jesus said to him, "Then see, your faith has made you well." At once he was able to see and follow Jesus, giving thanks to God. And when the crowd saw it, they all praised God. And Jesus went on into Jericho and was passing through. There was a chief tax collector named Zacchaeus, who was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but he was a little man and could not see Jesus because of the crowd. So he ran ahead of the crowd and climbed a sycamore tree to see Jesus, who was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to that place, he looked up and said to Zacchaeus, "Hurry down, Zacchaeus, because I must stay at your house today." And Zacchaeus hurried down and welcomed him with great joy. All the people who saw it started grumbling, "This man has gone as a guest to the home of a sinner." Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Listen, sir, I give half my belongings to the poor, and if I have cheated anyone, I will pay back 4 times as much." Jesus said to him, "Salvation has come to this house today, for this man also is a descendant of Abraham. The Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." We're saying in Colossians and in various bits and pieces of Paul's letters recently that we are set as Christians and as a Christian community high standards about caring and love and thoughtfulness and kindness and all this kind of thing. And we're just looking really at the pattern of Jesus' life to say, so what would Jesus do? What does this look like? What does Christianity look like? Not just in its rules, not just in its pattern, not just in the teaching, but you can't do better than just looking at the everyday things that Jesus does to get the feel of how we might be imitating him and going in the way. And just these couple of little stories. Well, one about 3 stories actually this morning. Last week we were talking about saying and doing nothing at times, and some of you might have practiced that this week. I won't ask you, you might not say anything, but this morning I want to share with you a few thoughts about how Jesus sees so well and hears so well and is good at touch. In other words, in making real contact and real impact on people. And I want to ask you, how good are you at seeing people? Not just seeing them, but you know what I mean? Seeing them. How good are you at hearing them? How good are you at making contact with them? Real contact with them. We start off with Zacchaeus. Usually we did this in Messy Church the other week. Zacchaeus was a little man and he climbed up a tree and all this sort of thing. And we got to the playing it out bit, you see, and we got a grey plastic chair. So we put that in the middle of the room and I got one of the boys to stand on it. And I said, "What does that remind you of?" And one of the parents said, "Looks like a tree to me." You all know what the story is, don't you? And it's a good story. But usually we're thinking about what Zacchaeus does and how he feels, or how Jesus treats him. Here we want to think about, in a human way, how would I imitate Jesus? What am I learning to do as Jesus did? And the thing he does that unlocks the whole lot is he sees this guy up a tree. If he doesn't see him, there isn't any talk, there isn't any meal, there isn't any repentance, there isn't anything actually. Rather boring piece of Luke where it says, "And he was walking through and past several trees." It's the fact that he sees the man up the tree that makes the difference. And Jesus is brilliant at this, isn't he? There's so much else to see. There's probably not just one tree, but lots of trees. They plant them in sort of rows, for the shade and what have you. There's lots of things. There's lots of people. There's lots of faces. There's a crowd moving with Jesus. There's a crowd who are spectators. There's lots of faces, in your face, as they say. There's a lot of things to see. It's not like meeting an Australian in the outback. That's the only person sort of thing. And yet Jesus sees amongst all of this, doesn't he? We just feel how we are about that. How do we see? You say, when I was in Causeway Head today, it was very busy, but I didn't see anyone. Come on. There was hundreds of them. You know what I mean? It's not like that, isn't it? I didn't see anyone. And so there are so many faces, and it's coming even today. There are so many faces. Even when you have a drop of coffee, perhaps after our service, there will be a lot of faces in the foyer. The people going out, people coming in, what have you. Who will you see? And then there's the background wallpaper. Jesus had all these trees, Well, go into a supermarket. Everything is there to visually engage you, isn't it? It's all colour, it's all pictures, it's all words, it's all special offers, it's big numbers, it's and you can go through there. Who else is shopping in there? Did you see any of them? No, in fact, you tend to bump into them, don't you? All that. Or perhaps you have the opportunity to get out on a great headland or a cliff around on a great coast, and you're saying, wow, what a visual feast of the sea and the sky and all this wonderful, and you notice there's a dozen other people standing there also looking at the view. Who are they? I haven't seen them before. So much wallpaper, isn't it? So who would Jesus, you see, pick out? Who would he guide you to? Who is somebody you might say, do you see that person there? Wow, well, no, I haven't really. Or perhaps on a day like mine sometimes, or a day like yours, you're going to meet a series of individuals, either in their homes or in their offices or wherever it is. You will meet them as individuals. Well, which of these people who you see are you actually going to see is going to be a priority for this day? There was lots of other people Jesus could have spoken to. Lots of other people Jesus could have gone for a meal with. Lots of other people who needed to be saved. And they weren't saved that day, but Zacchaeus was. So guide me, Lord. I can't really get into it with all these people today. So guide me. Who is it you want me to see? And Jesus takes on some hard stuff here. The man is hiding in a tree. He probably doesn't want to be seen by Jesus. He doesn't want to be seen by anybody else either, you see. People don't present well. Who are you going to see? Are they people who want to be seen? They don't always want to be seen. The people you need to make contact with in this week, to do some ministry with, to the Lord wants you to do something with them, even if it's just a word, for goodness sake, or just a smile. Which one is it going to be? They might not be the people who immediately catch your eye. They might not be the people who present well. You come into even a building like this, and you've got your friends, and you say, hi, and they immediately got you face to face. There's somebody behind you didn't notice, you see. And I say, well, they won't say, well, why aren't they a bit more visible? And yet they're exactly the person you really want to be. Huh? And Jesus is tackling somebody to see somebody who is not popular. One reason he's up the tree is because the crowd makes sure that an unpopular, an unpleasant man like a tax collector who happens to be short is not going to see Jesus. There's lots of use of the elbows here. But do you want to really make contact, visual contact, and then have conversation with somebody when everybody's, I don't want to talk about that. I want to speak to him. You get people in church, even in church, who are either very quiet or very talkative and very repetitive and very boring, that people will say, don't worry, just talk to me. This is an embarrassing conversation. Don't worry about it. Come on, talk to me. Don't worry, just difficult sort of thing. and you move away, and so you don't see them. And it's easy with a shoulder and all sorts of things. Unpopular. But also, you will be unpopular as well. Don't go there. Don't look at that. Don't go there. You know? And that could be here, it could be some beggar on the street, or it could be somebody who's unpopular. I think we need spiritual sensitivity to know. We're not going to go out trawling around for who to see, to who to catch their eye. We need a sense of spiritual sensitivity. Lord, who is it today who you'd want me to see amongst all these people? Who may not be obvious, who I don't want to see, who might be unpleasant, who might take me for a ride, who I never get away from when I've seen them, you know. Pray, Lord, I pray that you would sensitize me spiritually. I'll just go out there hoping for the best. Sensitize me spiritually. Before I did this job, one of my studies in terms of geology was dealing with seashells. Very interesting seashells are. Not curly ones, not gastropods, forget about those. The flat ones, you know, the sort of oysters and clams and all that sort of thing. I had to learn all their Latin names, and there are dozens and dozens of different sorts, you know. And so if I go out on a beach, there's not many really good beaches in this part of Cornwall because it's not muddy enough, there's not enough to eat. It's great sand for going surfing and swimming from, but it's not a lot to eat. But in other parts of the country, you will get amazing shell collections. And you walk down the beach. I can walk down a beach, and there's all sorts of things on the beach, a sandy beach that is. There's little bits of twig and bits of seaweed, and there's gastropods, and there's, you know, bits and pieces of this, and there's all these other shells. You can see them like scattered all the way down, you know. And I can walk down there and enjoy the view and enjoy the sea and run my eye over this lot. And I can, every 100 yards or so, I can say, oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Oh, that was interesting. You couldn't do that. You'd have to be doing this. You see? You're just sensitized to it. You can see that one is different. That is the one to look at. That is the one to pick up. That's the one to take home. I think we need that in terms of people we see if we're going to imitate Jesus, to be sensitized spiritually. This is someone to meet. The eye contact is important. This is a person who I see who is looking down, you know, amongst all the other people. Same goes for hearing as well. See, hearing. Now, blind Bartimaeus ain't going to see anybody, is he? He's not going to get any eye contact with a blind man. And but the situation's very similar. And Jesus is travelling along, and then he starts shouting from the back of the crowd, you see. Well, there's an awful lot of noise. Anybody who's seen anything from the Middle East, a wedding, a funeral, a demonstration, it is very noisy. And you can imagine all the noise of them going along here with this great crowd on the move. Jesus is going through Jericho and is probably leaving Jericho at this point, so he's moving away. And we know that Bartimaeus, who was static, was left on the pavement behind. You know, it might have been a good place to beg, but not when there's a big crowd. And he starts to shout, and amongst everything else. And Jesus just hears this amongst all this noise. People were been talking to him. Disciples would have been asking the rabbi questions as they did when they were moving along. People wanting a quick interview, all sorts of things. And yet amongst all that noise, he hears this guy, and he hears it. He hears that. And he stops. And he says, what's that? Who's that? And they say, oh, no, who's that? We're not going any further. Not going any further. He says, bring him to me. And he brings him to him. And then they make a start, just as they did with Zacchaeus. About hearing. We live in a noisy environment. Do we hear people? Hi, how are you? How long have you got? Not long. I don't hear you. Your tone of voice, your feelings. How are you? Fine. What does that mean? Does that mean fine, or does it mean not fine? You know? Why do you want to know? Sort of thing. You hear people. Are you hearing me? I could say that in a sermon. And if I say to you in a sermon, are you hearing me? I don't mind. I don't mean, is the PA working? Do I? It's not quite like that, is it? You know, who will you hear? But there's such a lot of noise, isn't there, these days? There's background noise, there's pipe noise, there's motorbikes, there's all kinds of noise. My gosh, anybody lives where we live, just behind Penley Park, with that wretched theatre there, hammering out heavy rock at 10 o'clock at night in the pouring rain. What are they doing over there? Why don't they shut up and go to bed? I mean, gosh, there is so much noise. I say that in Christian love. And you can't hear yourself dream. And there is, but also there's such a hubbub, isn't there? Lots of noise going on. It's interesting in groups of people. Everybody talks at once, and there's a sort of fight to the top. Who can speak the loudest, isn't it? So that you shh, gosh, that noise. And can you hear? We need to hear through that. Again, a spiritual sensitivity. Lord, what do you want me to hear? Do you want me to hear this person or that person? Can I hear through the hubbub? Can I hear through this? Even on the television, what do you want me to hear on the television? What do you want me to pray for about the 6 things on the BBC News? I don't pray for them all. I'm going to pray for one of them. What do you want me to hear? The voice of a refugee, the voice of a politician, the voice of this, the voice of that. What do you want me to hear this morning, today? I want to hear through it. And I want to hear people who don't speak loudly. It's people in our church who don't say much, need to be heard. People who are hurting and thus don't say much and draw into themselves, perhaps they need hearing. And people who make a lot of noise, they make so much noise, they talk such a lot, they are never heard, because you can never get a word in edgeways. Perhaps they need to be heard. Who is it today, Lord, you would make I could hear? People who are unpopular. People, if you get into conversation, you will never get out the other end of the conversation. I have not got half an hour to hear that story again. Do I hear that person? People I don't like. Oh, I hear you. I come out, and if I go out into the foyer, anybody who wants to say, it was a great service, very moved, you say it, I'll hear it. Okay? Anybody who wants to say, oh, I don't know what you were on about there. Take it home with you. I don't want to hear it, you see. You hear what you want to hear. And Jesus just hears that man. Lord, we want to be sensitized. I was going to communion, a midweek communion on Thursday at High Street. Now, I wouldn't say I'm ever late for communion at High Street, but I'm not always early. So I'm quite quick speed. I'm going up past just the bottom of Causeway Head there, around the corner and up by the pub, And there's a busker down the bottom. I like buskers on the whole. They vary, but I like them. It's so much better than begging. And there's a guy just picking away at a guitar. He was just making a little bit of music over everybody's noise and shouting in cars, all this sort of thing. And I went around that corner then, into Bread Street, and I'm just listening to about 3 chords. I'm thinking, hang on, I know that. I know that. And I think, what's that? And by the time I got to the carpet shop, I stopped. I found it stopped. I'd stopped because I was just listening for these 3 chords, And it was Neil Young. Great song. Harvest. One of the best songs ever. And you think, wow, just those 3 chords. I'm sensitized to those, aren't I? I heard that amongst everything else. We need to be sensitized by the Spirit to hear what people have got to say, haven't we? What do you want me to hear, Lord, today? We could go on. In a broader sense, you remember with Jesus and Jairus' daughter, when he's going to see Jairus' daughter, and this woman comes and touches him in the crowd. Touch is another thing. She touches him, and he feels the touch. And he says to the disciples, who touched me? And they say, Lord, everybody's touched you. And yet he's sensitized to the one touch amongst the lots of touches. You won't believe it. You say something like, we were in the middle of Maisie Day. It was very crowded. And you won't believe who I bumped into. You probably bumped into about 500 people on Maisie Day. But you don't mean that, do you? When I bumped into somebody, I touched them. There was something like that, yeah? We need to touch base. We need to get together. That kind of thing. Jesus touched. There's a general. I'm not a touchy person. I can't. And touch is a bit controversial these days, isn't it? But you can still shake hands with somebody. And lots of people. And do they grip your hand? Do they crush your hand? Are they very limp-wristed? Are they hot? Are they cold? What sort of touch is it? When somebody touches you on the shoulder, is that patronizing? Is it friendly? Is it inclusive? Is it, would you please move over to the left? What is that touch about? Is it something I should follow up? Because really, it's a contact. Is this the one person I'm going to meet today who I should have coffee with? Or should I not, because it's somebody else? Where is that touch when we meet? Is this a meet, or is it just a hi, you know? And you could go on. Be sensitized to that. About the way that you have contact with people. What does the Lord want me to do? And in everything it needs to be spiritual. Otherwise you'll just go around trawling around there. You don't want to become weird. You want to start looking at everybody in the eye and seeing, am I to be talking to you today? You don't want that. That's nuts. You don't want to be shaking hands with people to try and see if they're part of a secret organisation or something. You know, it's not that. It's that the Spirit sensitizes us so that we, like Jesus, can see and hear and touch. And we need the Spirit to do that. And when you do that, well, what will happen? In every one of those cases, Jesus had to give them time. In every case, he was on the move. He was up to Jerusalem for the crucifixion. He was on a flashing blue light thing for Jairus' daughter. In every case, he is ambushed. He allows himself to be ambushed. It changes his day, although he continues with it later on. Am I prepared for that? You see, if I do make contact, if I do see, if I do touch, if I do hear, it will take me time. I will need to change my day. I'm going to give you time. This person a conversation. I'm going to sit down with you, or I'm going to pray with you or for you, or whatever it is. It's going to take time. It will change me. Are we ready for that? We need a spiritual resourcing for that. This person could be difficult. I don't want to talk to people up trees, you know. I don't want to hear that all over again. I need a spiritual resourcing. I need fruit. I need love. And I need patience. And I need kindness. And I need gentleness. But I also need spiritual gifts and power. See, Jesus does things in those situations. He goes into that with Zacchaeus in his place, and he brings holiness into there, which brings not, it's okay being dishonest and it's okay being a tax collector, but it changes the man. I need to take holiness into this kind of situation, or I need to pray for somebody to be healed, or pray for something to happen. That needs spiritual power. Otherwise, I make contact, I make time, and I'm just as useless as they are. Well, I'm really sorry. I need resourcing by the Spirit. What are you going to do when I've seen somebody? And Jesus say, hi, good to see you up a tree, you know. We need to give them hospitality. What do you want me to do for you? He says that to Bartimaeus. What do you want me to do? Bartimaeus could have said, I need you under the Jewish law to get my son to give me food and lodging because I'm elderly. He didn't say that. But he lets him tell him. Tell me, he says. I'm listening. It takes time. But then when you do hear, what are you going to do about it? It runs. How long is it going to take? The disciples are saying, we're on the way to Jerusalem. How long are we going to be at Zacchaeus' house? How long is this meal going on, for goodness sake? Jairus is saying, how long are we going to be with this woman? Tell me, says Jesus. She told him the whole story. It could have taken ages. But into that, she's healed. The touch. You ready? We need a resourcing of the Spirit to run with it. When I've heard, when I've seen, when I've touched, what are you going to do? Is a spiritual thing. And I would just say finally, you really need the motivation. Do you really want to do that this week? We're busy people. You know? Jesus is a busy man. Every one of these 3 stories, he is on the move. He is not sitting around seeing if there's an opportunity. You will be busy when this happens. You will be on the way to doing something else. We need the motivation. And the likes of Peter and Paul and the other disciples, they are motivated in this because they know that Jesus has his eye on them. Peter knows that. He knows that Jesus has had his eye on him at a crucial moment. Paul knows when he was Saul that Jesus touched him on the road to Damascus and began with a question. Why are you persecuted? And there's a hospitality in the opening out there. They knew. If you are going to be looking for people, listening to people, it is because you know that Jesus has looked for you and Jesus has listened to you. If you want to touch people and reach out to them, it's because Jesus has reached out for you. As Peter says at the beautiful gate, I don't have anything, but I will give you what I have. What have I got? I've got Jesus. Band are just going to come and play for us, and I thought in the remainder of our service we would thus think about being refreshed and renewed by the Holy Spirit. We've got some very practical things this morning to do this week in looking, seeing, hearing, listening, making contact with, touching, and then running with it and seeing. We need resourcing, we need motivation. Otherwise it's just, hey, let's try something. Anyone could do that. It'd be a disaster. So let's seek the Spirit's refreshment so that we are spiritually sensitized. We are doing what Jesus would do.